The last thing that we will be reviewing is what to do when you have to factor a trinomial when the leading coefficient is some other number other than 1. Okay, so these are the ones that take a little bit more work. They're not quite as quick as the ones that we did yesterday will be. But the amount of, I guess, time that it takes won't be too terribly long, just because you just have to, it still involves trial and error. All right. So I'm going to go through the steps first, and then we will do some examples. All right. So you're going to notice that a lot of the steps that we did yesterday, it'll actually be the same as. But when it comes to that last step, instead of just doing like the regular trial and error, we're going to do this thing called chin and grin, which is still trial and error. It's just you'll see that there's a reason why I call it that. Okay. And so before you can do this part, you actually have to list out the multiples of the first and the last term before you do that. Okay. So we're going to go through these examples just so that you can see those steps in action. All right. So let's say that we have a trinomial and we have to factor it, but there's a number other than 1 up front. You still have to check for your greatest common factor. Do they have anything in common? And these don't. And then after that, you can go ahead and put your 2 parentheses like you did yesterday. But before you can start plugging anything in, you have to actually go ahead and write out what multiplies to give you this first number and what multiplies to give you the last one. All right. So what multiplies to give me 3? Well, 3 and 1, and then that's about it. And then with the other one, this is a little different. You're going to actually write out the multiples 2 ways. So you've got 5 and 1 will give me that, but also 1 and 5. You'll see when we start plugging them in, that'll actually help you to organize things. And then that's about it. That's all that multiplies to give me 5. Okay. And then you're going to go ahead and look at the sign. So just like yesterday, you look at the last sign. If it's positive, that means they're both going to be the same. And you look at what this sign is to know what they're both going to be. If it's a negative, that means they're going to be different. Okay. And so this is a negative. So that means the signs that go in here are different. And notice I'm not plugging them in because before I can plug them in, I have to actually do the chin and grin part first. Okay. So let's talk about what that is. All right. So you start with this one. Since that only has one set of factors that will multiply to give me 3, I can go ahead and plug them in. So 3 and 1 gives me 3, and then what times what gives me p squared? It'd be p and then p. All right. And then I'm going to start plugging these in. All right. So you can pick one. If you think ahead, you might be able to figure out which one works, but I'm just going to pick one at random first, and I'm going to plug it in there. Okay. And now this is where the chin and grin part comes from. So there's your grin. There's your chin. So notice a chin and then a grin. Okay. Some people will tell me it looks like a monkey. Everybody has their different things. All right. So then from there, the chin and grin part, you're going to actually multiply the numbers that are on each little part of it. So like the 5 and the 1, you're going to multiply. So 5 times 1 is 5, and it'd be 5p. And then 3p times 1, you're going to multiply. And then you're going to think through your signs. Okay, so the signs are different. So is there a way that I can combine these two things with different signs that will give me this middle number? So that part will kind of be similar. So is there a way to do that? Well, if you kind of think through it, if you put a negative with the 5 and a positive with the 3, negative 5 plus 3 ends up giving me negative 2. So that actually did work. If it didn't work, then you'd go back up here and you mark out that one, and then you'd plug in the other one and see if that worked. Okay, but this one did work. And so think about what you multiplied to give you this. Well, that one had to be negative. So that means the negative goes with this 5. And then the positive, well, we multiplied these numbers, so what goes there has to be positive. And that is actually the factored form of that expression. Okay, let's do another one. So it's a trinomial. Do they have a greatest common factor? No, they don't. So then I'm going to go ahead and multiply what gives me these numbers. So I've got 5 and 1 here. 5 times 1. And then here I got a whole lot of them. So I got 12 and 1, which we will reverse and write as 1 and 12 as well. And then we got 3 and 4, 4 and 3, 2 and 6, 6 and 2. And then I think that that's it. Okay. And then we have to kind of go through the same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and put my 2 parentheses. Luckily, this one only has one thing that works. So we've got 5 and 1. And then what times what gives me n squared? You got to put that with it. So don't forget about the variable up front. And then we're going to have to start kind of thinking through all of these. Okay. So you can pick one to start with. You could try to think through it before you start plugging in. I'm going to just pick one at random. Let's say that we try the 12 and the 1. Okay. Well, you do the chin and the grin part. So remember, you multiply the numbers that are on each part. So 12 times 1 is 12n. 5 times 1 is 5n. And then I'm going to look. Okay, well, my signs, that means they're going to be the same. They're both going to be positive. So if both of these were positive, would it combine to give me the 19? Well, 12 plus 5 gives me 17. So that won't work. So that means my 12 and my 1 does not work. So that means you erase. So you got to have a good eraser here. This is where the trial and error comes in. You erase and then you try something else. Well, let's try, I don't know, the 3 and the 4. So if I plug in a 3 and a 4, 3 times 1 is 3n. 5 times 4 ends up giving me 20n. If these are both positive, does that give me the 19n? No, it doesn't. So the 3 and the 4 won't work. All right, so since the 3 and the 4 didn't work, we'll scribble that out and then we'll erase and then we'll try a different one. So, well, since the 3 and the 4 got me closer, I guess, let me try the 4 and the 3. Okay, so I plug in the 4 and the 3. Do the same thing. 4 times n is 4n. 5n. 5n times 3 is 15n. And then I'm going to combine those with both positive signs. And oh, yay, that works. All right. So since they're both the same, we could have actually went ahead and plugged in our signs. And so 5n plus 4 and n plus 1 are both factors of that expression. All right. Let's do a couple more. All right. Trinomial has a number other than 1 up front. Does it have a GCF? No, they don't have anything in common. So I'm going to go ahead and get in the habit of listing out my factors. So what times gives me, or what times what gives me 5? It'd be 5 and 1. Then list out what gives me 9. 9 and 1, 1 and 9, 3 and 3. And we don't really have to write that one because it's going to look the same. And that's about it there. Go ahead and put our 2 parentheses. So then that just has one factor. So I'm going to go ahead and put 5 and 1, and then x times x gives me x squared. And then I know that both of my signs will be negative because that means they're the same. So then they're both going to be negative. And remember, if they're the same, you could technically go ahead and put them in. Okay. And then I'm going to start plugging in. All right. So let me draw my chin and my grin. All right. So let's see. We could try 3 and 3. See how that works. So 3 times 1x is 3x. 5 times 3x, we get 15x. And so if they both have negatives, would they combine to give me negative 18? And yay, it worked. So we found it on our first try. Now, if we didn't find it, if it didn't work, then we'd scribble it out and go back and try another one. Okay. So we got one more. And then hopefully we'll be good. All right. Check for a GCF. Do they have anything in common? No. It's a trinomial. So I'm going to go ahead and list out what multiplies to give me each one. So 4 times 1 gives me that. 2 times 2. Here we got 25 and 1. 1 and 25. Oh, we got 5 and 5. And I think that's it for that one. Okay, and then I'm going to put my 2 parentheses. All right. So now this was the first one that we did where it has 2 things that can multiply to give you the first one. You just have to take a guess. Or again, if once you get to do a lot of these, you'll kind of start being able to figure out some that will work and some that won't. Maybe you can think ahead a little bit. But we're going to just pick one at random. So let's say that we try the 2 and the 2. 2x and 2x. All right. So if I try that, I'm going to plug in and see which one of these will work. But let's go ahead and figure our signs. So the last sign is negative. So that means that these signs are going to be different. Okay. So let's start and let's see if the 25 and 1 will work. So if I plug in 25 and 1, 25 times 2x, I get 50x. And then 2x times 1, I get 2x. So if I combine those with different signs, well, I'll be able to get negative 15 out of it. And absolutely not. So the 25 and 1 won't work. Okay. So let me, and I know just by kind of looking ahead that the 1 and the 25 won't work. So let me try the 5 and the 5, because that's the only other one that could possibly work. Let's see. 5 times 2x is 10x. 2x times 5 is 10x. Do those combine to give me my negative 15 if they have different signs? No. So none of these work then. What that means is, because remember, this was the first one where we had 2 things. That means that the 2 and the 2 does not work. So we cross that out. And now we have to go all the way back over here and kind of redo from the beginning. Okay. So let me erase, and I'm going to now use my 4 and my 1. So sometimes it does take a little bit of erasing and noticing I have to redo this again, okay? Oh, my paper tried to go with me. Wow, that did not erase very well. Okay, so let me try my 4 and my 1. And then I'm going to plug in. So let's see, do we want to do, let's try the 5 and the 5. So let's say we've got 5x and 1x. Multiply them, you get 5x. 4x times 5, you get 20x. And remember, the signs are different. So do these combine with different signs to give me a negative 15? And I think they do. Because if you put a positive with this and a negative with that, they will give you the negative 15. So remember, you got to figure out where the signs go. So this was what you multiplied to give you the negative 20x. So that has to have the negative. And then the positive would go here. And so after all of that lovely fun-filled work, we get that as our factors. All right. Make sure you go back and review and replay whichever parts you need, or review your notes. Good luck on the homework.